here with Vickie Knight, and this has been a real treat for me because this is the furthest that I have traveled to do a podcast, and I'm down here in Winter Park, Florida. And Vickie, I love it. I've already fallen in love with this area. It's so pretty.
It is, and it's just a bubble. I call it the little bubble we live in. It's hard to believe it's just tucked away in Orlando, but it's a gem for sure.
And I just want to give a shout out to the Alfond Inn. They were very gracious, and they, number one, let us record here, and they let me have a little more time in my room, which was just perfect. So if you guys are ever in the Winter Park area, stay at the Alfond Inn. It is wonderful. Vickie, I want to also talk about the connection that you and I have together, because typically I will interview people who are either from Thomasville, Georgia, or they have some kind of connection to Thomasville, Georgia. I have to thank Stephanie Pichard. She is one of my best friends, and we were roommates my freshman year at Florida State. And Jay, her husband, is friends with your husband. They were fraternity brothers.
Right, at Sigma Chi.
Yes, and I knew a lot of Sigma Chi's because I was a Kappa Delta. Jay Pichard was one of our dagger men there. So we always had Sigma Chi's filtering in and out of our house quite a bit.
Right, and I think his sister was a Kappa Delta.
Yes. Both of his sisters. Okay. Now, his older sister, Elise, was with me. Okay. His younger sister, Lee, was, well, younger than me, so I was gone by the time she came in. But I just love having that connection.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about how you and Mick met. Did you guys meet at Florida State?
We did. We met my freshman year, his sophomore year, through Sigma Chi. I was a Sigma Chi little sister and started dating and got married, right out of college pretty much. So, yeah, it was just one of those, meant to be, I think, things, the way we kind of connected.
And you two have 3 children, is that correct?
Yes, we have 3 children. We have a daughter, Ryan. She's 26 now, and my middle one, John Michael, who is 22, will be 23 in March. And then Ben, our little caboose. He just turned 16, so I have a driver on the road. Yay!
Is he a junior in high school?
He's a sophomore.
Sophomore in high school.
Yes. And people think he's kind of my whoopsie baby, but he was probably the most planned of all my children, so he's very special.
You and I are talking today because your family had something happen that no one would have ever expected. That happened on December the 14th of 2015. So I want to go ahead and get into that story, and would you just tell us what happened on December 14th of 2015?
Sure. It started out a normal day. I had actually been away for the weekend. It was my mom's 80th birthday and had gotten back home on the 13th. So Monday morning, woke up the boys for school normally, like I do, and went downstairs and made them breakfast, omelets, bacon. I'm a big breakfast eater, so made them breakfast. John Michael took off about 7:20, 7:25 for school. Goodbye, love you, have a great day. And then within an hour, I guess, hour and a half, my phone, he started texting me. I had taken Ben to school, went into the chapel for morning mass, and then went to the car wash. And at the car wash, I get this text, I don't feel right, something's not right, I'm off balance, everybody sounds muffled, I have a terrible headache, all that type of thing. And I just immediately knew something was wrong. So I said, I'm trapped, I'm in the car wash, so let me get your dad. So I called Mick, and, he doesn't work very far. As you see, Winter Park's a small town, so, 5 minutes down the road, he got to Trinity before I did, but I ironically pulled up as John Michael was getting in the car, and he was visibly upset. So we went to the emergency room, and they diagnosed him with vertigo. So I just wasn't content. I just felt like something is seriously wrong here. And so I asked for a CT scan. I'm like, throw me a bone, give me a CT scan. So they did a CT scan. They did not see anything on the CT scan and just kept saying vertigo. Let me give you some meclizine, which they had already given him for the vertigo. And then while Mick went next door to fill the prescription, he all of a sudden became visibly in distress. Just shaking uncontrollably, sweating profusely, unable to form words. And, meanwhile, the discharge nurse is coming in and asking me to sign papers. And I'm looking at her, and she's looking at me, and she says to Joe Michael, here, can you sign? And I said, well, he's only 17. He wouldn't sign. She goes, oh, I know. I just want to see if he could. So she said, let me go get the ER doctor. So the ER doctor came back in and said, oh, this looks like a bad reaction to the meclizine, which you don't really have a reaction to meclizine. I mean, it has happened, but not. It's very rare. So she said, we don't have pediatrics here. We'll have to transport him to the main hospital. So get to the main hospital, and for pretty much most of the day, he sat there convulsing and shaking and sweating, pretty lifeless, as everybody just kind of watched him. And not till 2 days later did they find out he had suffered a massive brainstem stroke, which left him with what they called locked in, which I didn't know what that was. Never heard of it.
Well, let's go back for a minute,
Yeah.
because first of all, I have to give you credit for him sending you that text and you realizing something is not right here with my son. And I just look at myself as a mom, and I'm not sure I would have even have picked up on that. What was it about that text that sent those alarm bells off?
I think definitely a God thing, for sure, putting it on my heart. But he had, in the spring before, during lacrosse season, he had a few episodes, and really a few episodes now when I look back growing up, where he would get just really lightheaded and almost pass out. And I took him to the pediatrician when he turned 13, because I just felt like it was happening a little, it seemed more frequent. And even not that frequent, but it just, I'm like, you shouldn't be doing this. So she thought, probably the level of sports he plays, he's dehydrated, you need to make sure he stays very hydrated, and it all made sense. So, again, it wasn't a horrible thing. It didn't happen that often, but in the spring, right before he stroked, he was having trouble on the lacrosse field. He would get, his depth perception was off, and he would start having these little, then he'd have panic attacks, and it was just kind of weird. And he had terrible sinus infections going on at the time, and he was on all kinds of antibiotics. And then, they tried that. And I even back then, I said, something's not right. We went to the cardiologist, we went to the pulmonologist, we went, everything was coming back clean and healthy. And kind of just as soon as it started, it kind of went away. So we just kind of wrote it off like it was just bad sinus infection, sinus pressure, because his position in lacrosse is a face-off. So he starts the game, and he's on his knees, and his head is bent over. And we all know with sinus pressure, when you bend your head over, it's just, excruciating, and you feel a little dizzy or off balance. So, we just chalked it up to that, because he then played his best lacrosse that summer and was doing great, happy going into his senior year of high school. So I think that maybe was in the back of my mind, that was never resolved on why that happened. I don't really know. Again, I think it was just a God thing that just said, you got to go, you got to get him.
Yeah.
And I didn't even call the school. We just picked him up. He just came out and met us.
Well, knowing what you know now, could the brainstem, because he bled out in his brainstem, am I saying that correctly?
Correct. So a couple of years after his stroke, we found out why he stroked. They thought initially he had dissected an artery in the brainstem, but that's not what happened. He was born with a very rare thing with his arteries. They're too narrow, and some of the arteries don't even connect from the brainstem to the brain. So he should not be alive. I mean, most people born with this don't live. He should have never been able to play the level of sports he played. But by the grace of God, the scans also showed that the arteries from front to back are larger than normal. So that makes up for the blood that these arteries in the back are not producing for him. But he has very low blood flow. So we have to, constantly, he'll be on blood thinner for the rest of his life, and monitor his, hydration very well. So that's, why he stroked. Could they have done something? We didn't get the opportunity to find out.
Yeah.
It should be on the list, and that's one of the reasons, or one of the things that I want to come out from Jill Michael's story, is that kids do stroke. It's very rare, but it happens. You're quick to throw the EKG on them. They don't typically have heart attacks. Why not do the MRI? Why not find out what's going on?
At least rule it out.
Rule it out, exactly. Give them an aspirin. An aspirin could have maybe even helped. I mean, so.
May I ask you this? Is that when you're talking about his blood vessels in the back of his neck being too small, is that referred to as an AVM? Or is that different?
That's different.
Okay,
yes,
and
yes.
the reason I
Yeah.
ask is my husband's dad actually had that.
Okay.
And so I've heard of that condition,
Right.
and I was just doing a little comparison with what he had, but no, that was
Yes,
different.
right,
So,
yeah.
okay. So at this point, you guys had been to the ER. They thought that he had vertigo. Did not do an MRI at the ER.
Not. They did a CT scan, but they could have picked it up in the CT scan. They could have seen the clot that was forming. They missed it. Yeah.
And they sent him on to a pediatric intensive care unit at one of the local hospitals.
Yes.
And even when he got there, it was 2 more days before they determined what was going on.
Right. So that first day, like I said, everybody just stood there. They were giving him, Benadryl like crazy, thinking it's this reaction to the medication because nothing was making sense. And then finally, when they gave him a medication, I forget the name of it, it's a Parkinson's medication that stopped his tremors because obviously it was a neurological thing going on. So that helped him calm down. The next day, when he was stable, they started running every test in the book from, spinal taps to, MRIs to everything they could think of. They were doing blood work for rare diseases. They just were at a loss because everything, he was coming back so healthy. And so, they did the EEG to check his brain waves and his, by the grace of God, again, he's 100% cognitive. So the brain waves were not messed up. He still was cognitive. There was no damage there, so they were just at a loss. So Tuesday night, so the 14th was a Monday. Tuesday, after all of those tests, the ER doctor, making his rounds, came in and he kind of did this little movement with Joe Michael's foot, which I now know is checking for what's called clonus, and your foot kind of locks up and shakes when you're not getting signals. So he said, feels like he's locked in. Again, that's the first time I'd heard of that terminology. He said, we need to do a whole spinal MRI, like from the brain all the way down the spine. And that's when they saw the clot. They didn't catch it in the first MRI on Tuesday. Again, at that point, it probably was too late anyway. But they did that Wednesday. They took him down for the 4-hour MRI, and that's when they saw the clot and realized he had stroked and, that he's locked in. And so basically, we were waiting for him to come back from that MRI. And they had moved his room, which I thought was weird, on the ICU floor right across from the nurse's station. Of course, I'm in such shock and, I'm not putting 2 and 2 together that, they weren't expecting him to make it. So they were trying to put him as close to the nurse's station as possible. So the doctors, come into the room and pretty much, I can feel the moment. I can smell the moment. I can, visualize it so well because it's the worst moment of any parent's life. They come in and they're like, I'm sorry, your son has suffered a massive stroke and, he's going to be a quadriplegic for the rest of his life. And I'm so sorry, this is the worst news you could ever get. I mean, that's all I heard. Now, I'm sure there was 100 more words said, but that's all I heard. I just remember turning and collapsing into Mick and just sobbing and not even knowing. I mean, it took me a very long time to come out of that shock.
Yeah.
I mean, I put on a brave front, I think, for a long time, but it was awful. I mean, like the way my sisters describe it, like I would just make these noises and I didn't even know I was making them. I mean, it was awful.
Describe the term locked in, because there are people out there who may not fully realize. I've read your book, which is excellent, by the way, but people may not really realize what that means. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So locked-in syndrome is basically a type of paralysis where all you can do is move your eyes up and down. You can't even move them vertically, and you can't make your body move at all. It's different than a spinal cord paralysis because it is neurological and the brain is always healing and creating new pathways. If you survive locked in, you can recover, and you can, maybe not fully, but you can recover different things with, repetition and practice and, just even holding the head up. We started, at 2 seconds, and now he can hold his head up, normally. It's like a baby. You're starting all over, again. So it's a scary thing, and most people don't survive, sadly, because people don't realize they're still in there, and they just pull the plug because they can't communicate and no one realizes it. And doctors are very quick to do that. I have a lady that just reached out to me via a mutual friend, and her husband just suffered a massive stroke and is locked in, and he's at the Mayo Clinic, and they're like telling her he can't go to a rehab facility. He's going to have to go to an acute care facility because he can't do anything. I said, no, tell this doctor to call me. They have to get him to rehab. That's the only way he's going to recover. If he just sits there, nothing's going to happen. And he's got 2 little girls. I'm like, oh, just breaks my heart.
Yeah. So, again, as I'm looking at your story, as I'm hearing your story, I just really do see that God's hand was on you because, as a parent, as you said, you were in such shock. So I'm just trying to put myself in that position. I don't know what, I don't even know how I would have responded. Except to not do anything. But
Well,
somehow you had the strength to say, okay, this is my son. He's 17 years old. He may be locked in, but he's in there.
Yeah.
He's 100%
I
in
always
there.
knew, and I don't really know how, but I always knew. There was never a doubt in my mind, but the Holy Spirit was so present in that room because we were at a hospital that's owned by Seventh-day Adventists. I mean, it's very, spiritual. People would pray over him before they'd take him in for the MRI. But in hindsight, again, when they realized what happened and they didn't think he was going to make it, and again, not putting two and two together, I think I had every person from every denomination in that room praying over him, and our priest came and probably said last rites, and I didn't even realize it. You know what I mean? Because nobody was expecting him to live, but there were so many prayers offered up and hands laid on, and I just feel like God was there, and all I could say was, we need a miracle. Every time somebody came in to pray, I'm like, I need a miracle. Please pray for the miracle. And I just feel like he did. He saved my son for sure.
Yeah. How long did John Michael end up staying at the hospital, the Seventh-day Adventist hospital, before he was transferred to Shepherd?
He was in the ICU for 21 days, so 3 weeks, and then we moved on to Shepherd. And a lot of that had to do with there wasn't a bed ready and the holidays, because we were at Christmas time, and then it was New Year's, so
yeah.
they thought, you're not going to get the doctors or the real therapists because they're all on vacation, so you might as well hunker down in the ICU where he's getting good care and love, and you're still at home, and then come on up. So we left for the Shepherd Center on January the 5th.
And I remember reading in your book that you and John Michael had to get in an airplane and go to Atlanta.
Yeah.
And I remember even reading in the book that his breathing became labored during the airplane, and sure, from being at a different altitude. And
yeah, so that was another miracle and blessing, is that very few, I have heard about or read about a few, or in the groups that I'm involved in, people that were able to always breathe on their own. Most locked in, you can't even breathe on your own. Like he couldn't open his mouth on command. Like he had nothing. But by the grace of God, he was able to breathe on his own, and he was never trached or never vented. I mean, I'm so grateful.
And I remember too that they gave him stem cell treatment for that, and that helped with his breathing.
I have to believe it did. Again, when they give you the stem cell, and the stem cell's still so new,
right.
Was it the stem cell? Was it God? Was it just his body was going to be able to do it anyway? I don't know, but I have to say that possibly it did. We just happened to have a doctor that had relocated down here from St. Jude's, and he was a stem cell specialist, so he did the stem cell. Yeah.
Just a coincidence.
Yes.
Ha-ha.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Right. Yeah.
You get to Shepherd, and based on what I've read in your book, and you'll have to tell me if I'm saying this correctly or not, but was your perception that when you got there that he was going to be able to walk out of that hospital? But when you got there, you saw wheelchairs everywhere. And what did that do to you? How did you respond to that?
I think it set me into a panic mode, and I kind of went back to that shock. I felt like, after 3 weeks in the ICU, I was kind of not really coming out of the shock, because I don't think I really came out of it for 2 years, but just kind of set me into, I was able to kind of get a grip of it, but like, oh my gosh, I can't do that. What's going on? I'm not, no, and then I had to, get myself back together and say, okay, God's got this. We're here for a reason, and it's going to be okay. People do walk out of here, it's still going to happen. These are mostly spinal cord injury. That's very different than a brain injury. So I had to really talk myself off the ledge.
And so with John Michael being locked in, he's 100% cognitively there, but what about the communication with him? How were you guys able to develop a way to communicate with him?
I have to say, I have to give all the credit to our good friend Scott Levitt, and this is another thing, like I just told this sweet lady whose husband had the stroke, you have to have an advocate, because you really aren't capable of advocating for yourself when you're in that kind of moment. And he did all the research, because I couldn't read anything, and I certainly couldn't comprehend it. So he found other people who had been locked in, and the way they communicated, it's with this letter board, and we kind of tailored ours to how we thought would work best for us. So it was a series of 5 rows, and it's just the alphabet. So row 1 we made all the vowels, instead of going through the whole alphabet. So row 1 is the vowels, and then row 2 starts the alphabet minus the vowels. So, for instance, if you wanted to spell mom, I would say, does it start in row 1, row 2, row 3? So row 3, he'd give me a big eyes. So then I'd start going across row 3, and 3 is LMNOPQ. Well, O's not there, but LMNPQ. So I would start going, and he'd big eyes at M, and then I'd say, okay, second letter is it in row 1? Obviously, a vowel comes after M. So you start to learn these little tricks to make it go faster. So you don't have to ask what row's the second letter in, because after M is going to come a vowel. So okay, what vowel is it? And then O, and so it was crazy, and we got very fast and very proficient at it, and people would look at us like, what are you doing? You have your own language,
Yeah.
and really it was little Ben. I say little Ben because he was only 10 at the time. He had it memorized, like that, and when I realized he had it memorized, I thought, I can memorize this too. It's very easy, the alphabet, so
Right.
I didn't have to have the chart in front of me every time we spelled a word or a sentence, but it would take a while to sometimes get sentences out, and then it's just been exhausting.
But that had to be a huge step, and it must have just given John Michael so much hope, and given y'all so much hope, just that you had a way to be able to communicate with
Absolutely. Yeah, no, for sure. But just to be able to get words or feelings out, and he would always say he's very witty, and he's actually very intelligent. So he wouldn't just say scratch, like scratch nose. He'd have to do a full-blown sentence. Can you please scratch my nose?
Right.
And I'm like, oh my God, that took 20 minutes. All you had to do was say scratch nose.
Right.
But, again, he just needed to get the words out, and I had to respect that, But for
Yes.
me on my end, I was like, oh gosh, can we just say scratch nose?
But that was giving him some control to be able to communicate that way. And,
Absolutely.
and I can remember, I love the fact that in your book you wrote and John Michael wrote. And so it was really neat, because you don't think about this, but he would say he did need something scratched, and you just, you can't do that.
You
So
can't, yeah.
you've got to be able to, and we take things like that so for granted, don't we?
Absolutely. I think about that, and especially with what's going on in the world, and people having been locked in from COVID. We were all locked in our houses. Just the parallels and just how people handled it, and some people can do it and some people just can't. And I think John Michael was blessed with a spirit that can handle this.
Yeah.
Like if I picked another, I would never pick him, but if this had happened to I know she's going to be upset, but my daughter, this would be a whole different journey, and it may not look as pretty.
Right.
And she'll even say, I could have never handled it the way he has handled it.
Yeah.
They're just different people, and she may have handled it better in some ways than he's doing. So everybody's different.
Yeah. And I also believe that, one of the things that drives me crazy that I've heard Christians say is God doesn't give you anything you can't handle. What a lie.
What a lie.
Isn't that a lie?
Such
Please
a
don't
lie.
say that to people.
No. Oh, I kind of want to write a book on the things you should never say to people. And I have said them, so
yeah.
this is not judgmental. Anybody who said them to me, because you're at a loss for words.
You don't know.
And you're trying to
Yeah.
comfort. And those do sound like very comforting words, but it is the biggest lie
Yeah.
out there, because it's God who handles it, not me. I don't have the
Exactly.
strength to get up every day and do this. It
Yeah.
is God. It gives me the strength. And some people choose to dig deep and hang on to that strength, and some people don't.
Yeah.
I think it is a choice. It's not that God's going to do it for me.
Right. And I think it is amazing, though, that when we go through any kind of difficult trial, that God will supernaturally give us whatever we need to go through that trial.
Yes.
And so I can remember going through something just so minute compared to what you guys have been through, but I can remember God saying, Angie, do you want to use your strength or do you want to use my strength? That's not hard to figure
It's
out.
not. But being human, sometimes we do try our own strength, and then we realize, okay, this isn't working. I need to take his strength, because mine's not going to make it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's so neat too, just again going back to what I read in your book and reading about John Michael's friends. What a great group of young people, because I'm not sure I would have had their wisdom at that age to reach out to my friend who had been through what John Michael went through. And I just think it is so admirable of all the young people who have been a part of his life since this happened to him.
No doubt. I mean, and knowing these boys for a while, and I think I refer to them in the book as this as well. I always called them dumb, dumber, and dumbest, and they could choose who is who, because if you have a boy, you know what I'm talking about.
I've heard moms of boys talk about
I
that.
love my boys dearly, but they just, oh my goodness, would do the craziest things. Nothing, they were just boys.
Right.
But they stepped up in a way that just defines friendship in a way I don't know that I had ever seen. And my friends did as well, but to see it in the young people was just so, it just gave me renewed hope in youth that they aren't completely lost. And they have, and they're still there, and my prayer for them every day is that, Lord, just don't let them grow weary in this friendship, because it really can be a one-sided friendship. They come over all the time, and they hang out, and they do things, they take and play, it's hard. That's not an easy place but if you ask them, they're like, well, what do you mean? He's my friend. Of course I'm going to be here, So they look at me like, why would you say that? He's my friend. Of course I'm going to be here. So it's nice. And he did have one friend that he was particularly close with, younger, that just, he couldn't handle it. He'll come, but he won't come alone. And he wasn't one of the ones that was just always there. But that's okay. I told him, I go, he's having a hard time with it. He can't, and
Right.
we're still gonna love him, and he still loves you. It's just
Yeah.
he just has a hard time with this. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing that I think is just so amazing is John Michael's love. And I think back about Valentine's Day and how that was just a couple of months after this had happened at Shepherd Center, if I'm relaying this correctly. And he thought so much of you that he got you a gift for Valentine's Day. And I just thought that was one of the sweetest stories.
No, he's very sweet. He's always had that just a sweet, gentle spirit, and we've always had a very close connection. But this took it to a whole nother level. We're probably too close now. It's probably not even a healthy close. We're just, he knows way more about me than any child should, and I know way more about him than any mother should of a 22-year-old. But all good. But yes, so there was a girl who happened to be the cousin of one of his good friends from home, lived in Atlanta, and she would come and stay with him while I would go grab dinner or shower or whatever, so I could get a break. And so he asked her if she would go buy me this little cross necklace, because he knows my faith is very important to me. So he, when he gave it to me, he spelled out, "I like to see you happy." So just, he knew this was taking a toll on me, and just always thinking of other people, even in his worst situation. It was very touching. I think that was the first time I cried in front of him throughout this whole ordeal, because I
Wow.
tried to be very strong for him. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you think that's okay, though, to show your emotions in front of him now that you can kind of look back on the crisis period and just dealing with the shock? And I'm sure there's just a whole range of emotions that...
Absolutely, and I do wish I would have shown emotion early on as opposed to kind of holding out, just because I think I put on that brave front, and I was lying even to myself, that I'm okay and I got this, and I really did not, and I was not okay at all.
How did this change the dynamics of your family with your husband and your younger son, Ben, and with Ryan?
I would say definitely we grew closer on so many levels, because we just were clinging to each other. I know early on, I remember coming home one night, somebody else was staying with Joe Michael while we went home to grab some dinner, and we were in the car, and we just kind of started bickering, and I thought, okay, we have got to show each other grace, because this is going to be hard, and we need each other, and if we start bickering and getting on each other, it's just not going to end pretty. So it's definitely hard, and I always worry about Ben. Not that I don't worry about Ryan or myself, but he was 10 when it happened, and his whole little life, because there were 7 years between Ben and Joe Michael. I was so busy with Brian, then she went to college, and then Joe Michael, being recruited to play, lacrosse. It was very busy and a lot of tournaments, and, living in the Northeast for half the summer, and, dragging Ben everywhere, leaving him behind, but I kept always saying, you're going to have 7 years, it's going to be just you, Ben, you wait, it's just going to be you. And then now it didn't happen for him, that it was just him. And, the poor guy's, wait, Ben, wait, and, okay, I'll be there in a minute, or, then I forget, or, find a ride, or, so it's, I just, that's been hard for me. the guilt of not being able to be the mom for him that I was for the others, because John Michael takes up so much of my time. But he's so, understanding, and he does, seems so happy and does well in school, and, I don't, God is good.
Yeah, well, and I have to believe, too, that God's given Ben the grace, too,
Yes.
and God will use things in our lives to make us stronger. And so, what I'm hearing from you is this young man sounds like he just probably has a whole depth to him that young people his age don't have.
No, he had to grow up very fast. Yeah.
Let's go back to Shepherd Center, because I know that was not an overnight process. What was the total amount of time that John Michael was at Shepherd Center?
We were at the Shepherd Center for 5.5 months. They originally wanted us to leave after 6 weeks, but we fought very hard. And in hindsight, I think as far as his recovery goes, it might have been a better move to come home, but I was not ready. I feel like Shepherd, at the end of the day, was good for John Michael for a lot of reasons, but I think it was better for me. I learned how to accept the situation we were in. I learned to adapt to this adaptive life that is not easy, and it's not cheap, and it's not user-friendly.
Mm-hmm.
I learned a lot, and I overcame a lot of fears. I used to be kind of scared of wheelchairs, not the person, and I don't know why. I just had this kind of it just made me uncomfortable.
Right.
Maybe that's a better word for it. And now, of course, it's my everyday life, and it's what I do. And
I think if all of us were honest, we would confess that disability makes us uncomfortable.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so, I just think when you can go back and just be honest and just raw before the Lord,
Yes.
and just say, God, I really can't handle this.
Yeah.
You're going to have to equip me. And
Yeah.
but he does.
He does. And they were great at Shepherd Center on teaching me, and I'm sure they laughed at me. So of course we were on a brain injury floor, and most of these people had cognitive kind of issues. John Michael did not. So the doors were locked. You had to sign out to be able to leave and buzz yourself in, because they couldn't have people just straying the halls, not knowing where they were. So as I'm learning, they don't help you. I mean, you got to figure it out. So of course, John Michael on certain mornings would go up to the fourth floor to do the treadmill. So of course I'm bopping in. I've got my coffee, and I'm okay. We've got to go up, John Michael. So here I'm trying to manage this power wheelchair, drink my coffee, and open the door, and hold the door, and move the. Oh my God! I'm sure they just sat there like, "Lady, you have so far to go. That is not going to work." It's a big learning curve.
Well, tell me about the progression you saw in him from January 5th when y'all got there until when you left. Was it around May?
Yes, May 24th. We actually came home, picked the 24th for him, because that is his lacrosse number. So, yeah, I mean, when we got there, he couldn't track his eyes left or right. When we left, though I believe it was the right I was tracking, the left was slow, but it was starting to track. His head, he could sit up with his head and maintain control, not for all day, but for an extended period of time. And he was starting to activate a lot of muscles. Didn't, of course, nothing functional, but the muscles were starting to move on his own. So that was good. He was sitting edge of mat for maybe a minute or so, with a little bit of support and help. But yeah, I mean, he finally passed a swallow study. So he came home being able to eat, pureed and soft foods, which was huge.
That was huge, wasn't it? Because did he have to have a feeding tube? So
yeah, he had a PEG tube in his stomach, so that was gross, and we hated it and very uncomfortable for him. And again, we had been at Shepherd. We got there on the 4th. I think not even a week later, the doctor sat us down and told us he would never be able to do anything. He'll never eat. He'll never talk. He'll never, and that we need to learn to. But he can have a good quality of life. And she knows people who have gone on to be, because he is smart and da da da. And I just sat there rebuking her, like, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus. I'm not listening. I'm not buying it. No way. Not happening. And,
I remember reading that story, and so what you're referring to is the doctor at Shepherd Center sat down with you and basically gave you zero hope.
Zero.
And I do have doctors who listen to this program, and I know there's a fine line, because you said you don't want to give false hope, but yet you don't want to paint such a grim picture that, because this young man is young,
yes,
and he's strong, and
people have recovered. And if you you should know that. You should know that people have recovered. I can't guarantee you he's going to, but here are some stories that people have. I hope it encourages you to
Yeah.
keep doing physical therapy, but your odds are not great. I mean, again, don't give me false hope, but don't give me no hope. And again, she's a lovely lady. She's a great doctor. This is not about her credentials or anything like
Right.
that. We were very happy with her, very happy with everybody at Shepherd, but you don't know what you don't know. And I just refused to believe it. And when he got off the feeding tube, we got home in May. He got off the feeding tube early November. I mean, he was really eating food by October, but because of water, that was harder for him to swallow because it goes too fast. He couldn't control it.
Okay, it's not thick. So.
Right. We had to thicken it, which was gross for a while. But in November, when he was able to finally drink water, the tube came out, and he wanted to send it to her. We are not vindictive people. We're not going to do that, but it did cross my mind.
You do need some humor.
Yeah.
I find that very funny.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, he's a funny guy. He's fairly funny. But so the feeding tube came out, and so he's eating a normal diet. He eats everything from sushi to steak to, there's nothing he doesn't eat. Thank goodness, because he was always a big eater. And he is speaking now. It's very quiet, and we haven't spelled. We haven't used that spelling chart in 2 years. So it's a lot of lip reading, but again, he's able to talk, and if you're around him enough, you can understand him pretty well.
That's exciting.
Yes, very exciting, and it's coming. It's I know it's coming. Yeah.
And tell me also, as a senior in high school, when he had the brainstem stroke, and you guys came home on May the 24th. When was graduation? And I want you to just tell us about that.
Yes, that was just the most amazing day. It was June 2nd, and JaMichael had spelled out at the Shepherd Center to me, I will walk at graduation. So we worked very hard with his friends coming up to Shepherd to practice him, just, them holding him and him, activating some muscles and then moving the leg for him. But they were not leaving their friend behind. And it just took that whole scripture verse, about friends, and when the gentleman was paralyzed and he was on a mat, and they took the mat and they wanted him to get to Jesus, and they lowered him through the ceiling or the roof of the building, and it brought that to complete. I just watched the gospel being played out right there in front of my eyes, because they did that for their friend. I mean, it was a diploma. It wasn't Jesus, but Jesus was very present in that room, and anybody who was there that's a believer will attest to it. It was a beautiful moment, not a dry eye in the auditorium. And they saved his name for last instead of doing alphabetically, because they knew it was going to be a big deal, and they didn't want to take it away from the person who comes after him. It was like, how do you do that?
Yeah.
How do you call the next person's name after a thing like that? But it was sweet, because he had written something, or I spelled it out, I guess, and I gave it to the assistant headmaster, who happened to be one of his best friend's father, to read, and it was sweet, because he wrote in there, "Mama, we made it."
I'm seriously about to cry
I
right
know.
now
Yeah.
because I just get a visual of
Yeah.
him walking across that stage, being helped by his friends.
Yeah, it's on YouTube.
Is it?
You can
Oh,
Google
I'm definitely
it.
gonna look that
Yeah,
up.
Yeah.
Tell me what's going on with JaMichael now. You guys are back home, and of course, I remember I'm kind of backing up a little bit before the graduation, but I also can visualize in my head y'all coming home. It's very different coming home this go around, but the roads were lined up with people to cheer you on.
It was. I get chills just even thinking, and that's online as well. So you talked about Winter Park. It is a very, very unique place. Small town. Most people around. Mick grew up here. I've lived here for 30 years now, between the kids' school and volunteering and church involvement. The outpouring of love and support that we have been shown and still are shown to this day is just unbelievable. I mean, again, I've lived here 30 years. I know people who've lost children. I know other tragedies that have happened, and I just have not seen the type of outpouring that we received. So when we came home, they had a little parade for us down our main street. It's called Park Avenue. It's just some shops and restaurants, and it's probably half a mile long, maybe.
Yeah.
And it was just lined with all his friends and all because our church is actually at the end of the road. So church and all the kids from the church school were out and cheering, and They all had their J.M. Strong shirts on, and purple for some reason became the color. I think somebody at first thought purple was a sign of hope, but it's not.
That's okay.
Purple's royalty, but that's okay. For us, it was a sign of hope, and that we still have a purple ribbon on our tree. They're all down now. The city did come around and take them down after a while because they were up for a very long time, and they're like, we can't keep showing support for just one person in this community. So anyhow, it just was amazing. All the streets, we have a lot of tree-lined streets with big old oak trees, and every one of them had a purple ribbon on it, and some had his picture. I mean, it was just, I was overwhelmed. I just sobbed the whole way. I mean, down the street, I couldn't even, yeah. And like his little preschool teacher was there, his little 3-day preschool teacher, just standing there sobbing, waving. Oh my God, I know, I just can't.
Wow.
Yeah, so we've had such great support. I mean, and even to they're doing something for him this weekend. They're having a little car parade for him on Sunday to raise money and awareness, and it just we're 5 years out.
Yeah.
So we're very blessed, very very blessed with a strong community of people that have just loved on us big time.
Another thing I remember reading in your book is obviously before John Michael had his stroke, your home was not handicapped accessible in any way, and so he literally had to move into your dining room.
Yes.
So how did that change? I mean, tell me about the family dynamics once he got home and how you guys.
Yeah, it was hard because up until that point, of course, he's not eating. So the dining room is, of course, right off the kitchen, and I love to cook, and I just always felt guilty because he had to smell the food and he couldn't eat it. And but yeah, so he was in our dining room because all of our bedrooms were upstairs. We had a detached garage, so we built a bathroom that was accessible for him to be able to shower, and then eventually he was able to use the toilet. So we just moved into our new home. We built a home that is much more user-friendly for him. He has a real bedroom, an indoor bathroom, the little things that you can celebrate.
Right.
And he really technically has his own side of the house. So the way the house is kind of set up, it's kind of the motor courtyard, and then you have 2 garages up front. So it kind of makes the house look a little more ostentatious than it is because they're big two-car garages. My garage, and then his therapy room is the other one where he does a lot of his therapy. And then the right side is his side. He's got his own TV room, a little bathroom for his friends, and a bar area, laundry room for caretakers so that they have their own space and they don't have to be in my space, and then his bedroom. And then the other side is just my room. And then we have one big common area with the kitchen, dining, and family. And then upstairs is Ben. But yeah, so no ramps. Everything is flush. He can operate doors, TV, lights, alarm, AC with his phone.
That's amazing.
Yes, yeah. So it's a smart house, and I'm, 53, so I've had to have a lot of tutorials, but I'm getting there.
What is a typical day like for him now?
Yeah, so I try not to make it so monotonous. We go to CORE. We used to go 5 days a week. CORE is a place up in Longwood, just a few exits up the highway, where, of course, never heard of it, and it's in my backyard. It's a center of exercise and recovery. A lot of, spinal cord injuries, but some stroke and Parkinson's. They do a boxing class for Parkinson's. Very special place. Very, very special place. If you're feeling sorry for yourself, you should just pop in because you can't feel sorry for yourself when you walk in that gym and see them working so hard. So we go there Monday, Wednesday, Friday. He'll get up around 8. I have the night person. I like a night help more than day help because I like my sleep.
Yeah.
And then I have a sweet lady who's been with us since day one, and she comes just for an hour really to help the night person shower him and get him dressed for the day. I mean, he's a 6'1", 180-pound individual. It takes 2 people.
Yes.
I mean, one person can do it, but it's nice to have the extra set of hands. So I have that in the morning. Then he gets up and has breakfast, so I'll give him his breakfast, and then he might do a couple therapies at home that we have, some hand things or, other stimulation things for the body. And then he'll leave about 10:30 for CORE, and he's there until, 3 hours. He does an hour of OT, 2 hours of PT, and then comes home, has lunch, and, sometimes he's done for the day. Other times he might have a massage or acupuncture. And then the days he doesn't go to CORE, he has speech always. Speech comes to the house Monday through Friday. And then Tuesday, Thursday, I have neurological OT and PT that come to the house to do things in the garage with him for his therapy. So he's busy.
He is busy.
He's very busy. He has therapy, 4 to 5 hours a day, Monday through Friday, and sometimes Sunday if he wants it.
So what are his goals now? Where does he want to go from here?
Well, he definitely, obviously same goals, to walk, to talk. I do have to say, when we wrote the book, the publisher, was so impressed with how thorough his edits are, because again, he's very smart, that she hired him. So he's been editing books for Scripture Publishing that did our book. He has done 4 books now. Yeah, so he has a little job, so he gets very excited and proud of that. The other night he was scheduled for a massage. He was coming to the house, and he's like, "Can you take my massage, because I have to work?" I'm like, "Okay."
I'd be okay.
I have a deadline.
Twist my arm.
I know,
All
right? Yeah, sure. I'll take the massage to Michael. I'll take one for the team today. Yeah. So it was cute. It's sweet. Yeah.
And he still has friends who come by, and
Yes.
they do guy things, and
Oh yeah, that's why he has his side of the
right.
Close the doors and don't need,
Please, yeah.
don't need to watch what you're watching or hear your music. Yeah, it's all good. Yeah, I mean, is it a normal life? No. I mean, should he be doing more? We have a good friend that our friend that was our advocate in the beginning, they moved out to Utah, and they keep saying, come out. I've gotten involved with the adaptive ski people, and they can get him down the slopes. And I mean, the problem is getting there. He can't fly commercial because of his chair. We've been told by every wheelchair person it's not a smart idea. You get there and they've broken something, because they have to take it and put it underneath the plane, and then a wire comes disconnected, and I don't know what's. Then how do I get him out of the tarmac? So
Right.
We're trying to figure out a way to get him out there. Because that would be great to get him down the slopes.
Oh yeah. And what a beautiful place to
absolutely
just be.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
I want to ask you something. I know that there were days when you probably just felt really down, and would you just call out to God and just say, "God, I just need to hear from you today. I just need to know that you love me. I need to know that you care." And can you recall some things that happened that would just lift your spirits, even if it was something as small as somebody just smiling at you? Or because I'm just trying to think of ways that we people can reach out to people who are going through difficult times and just be a support.
Absolutely. I mean, days you cry out, days you kind of yell at him, like, "Oh my God, please, are you serious? Do something, give him something, anything." And sometimes on days like that, a therapist will text me, "Oh my gosh, Michael, held his arm up for 5 seconds longer than," and you have to celebrate that, because that's huge. It's a victory. Or speech. His voice was so loud today, I understood 90% of what he said. I mean, so I get those little things, but I have to. God's timing is amazing, because on my lowest days, inevitably, I will get a note in the mail from a stranger.
Really?
Or sometimes it is somebody I know, but 90% of the time it's from someone I don't know, just talking about or a message on Facebook, or how Jermichael's story and our story and how we've handled has touched them, increased their faith, or made them go back to church, or what. I mean, God is so good, and His timing is so perfect. I honestly, on my wits' end, I will get something from somebody.
And I love that, Vickie, because I'm just a huge note writer. I still like to do handwritten notes. I mean, I love emails, and I love messages that I've gotten on Facebook and Instagram too, but I can go back to my handwritten notes if I'm having a hard day and just look at those, and it just gives me such inspiration. So I think in this world that we're living in now, that's one of those lost arts that even if it's just, "Hey, I'm just thinking about you today. I hope you're having a great day." Something as simple as that.
Absolutely. And there's also, too, a very neat story. We were at Shepherd Center, and these 2 women came in, and I didn't know them. And they said, "We just want to bless you and pray over you." And there's a group of women. We're called 12 Ordinary Women. And it's all anonymous. You never know who they are or who sent them. And they do different things. Like this particular time, it was a monetary donation. But, I've gotten a gift card for Starbucks in the mail from them, or over the years, just different things. But just what a neat group of women that they just pray for families to help, and they do different things, whether it's send flowers or a gift card again, or just ask, "Can we come pray with you?" Or I mean, just it's so beautiful. And they just all stay anonymous. I mean, they came in, their names were Faith and Hope, wasn't their real names, but yeah.
What a great idea.
Yes. I mean, just super sweet, and just made me feel so special.
Well, do you have time though where you are able to have time for yourself, where you're able, because I'm sure that became very important too, is to just, to still take care of yourself and be able to have just some fun away from your
Right.
normal routine, new normal routine. Are you still able to do those kind of
I
things?
definitely am now. I learned the hard way because, if anybody knows me, I'm the giver, I'm the doer, and I put myself last, which, it's okay. I mean, but there comes a point where your body says, no, and I ended up getting breast cancer. I had stage 1. They called it early. Had a double mastectomy, ended up having to have 4 rounds of chemo, but I am good, and thank God I'm cancer-free.
Yes.
So praise God. And it was all a result of stress. It was stress-induced. I don't carry the BRCA gene. It's just kind of a fluke. It was just all stress-induced. So I started taking better care of myself, making time for myself. I try and get away to, a couple times a year with girlfriends or just my sisters, just to refresh and renew and because for a long time I would just feel guilty, like I can't go out and have fun. He's just sitting here doing nothing. That's not fair, kind of thing. But it wasn't fair to my body for
Right.
my mental frame of mind either. So I do a better job. I'm a big runner, so I make sure I get my run in and try and have lunch with girlfriends when I can, or girls' night out, just to renew and recharge.
Yeah, and I agree.
Yeah.
Well, it has been such a pleasure talking to you today. Is there anything else you want to add or share?
No, I mean, the book is called My John 3:16, and our goal wasn't really to make money or to become any kind of bestseller, but just to truly, number one, create awareness that kids stroke, and it
Yeah.
needs to be on the list, and for them to think about it, because again, maybe an aspirin could have saved us from having as bad of the results as we did. Maybe there would have been some deficiencies, but it may not have been quite as bad.
Yeah.
And two, just never give up, and hope is so important, and faith that if you don't know God, talk to somebody about God. If you're a believer, just don't ever let go of it, because I would not be standing here today. When people say, how do you do it, I just want to show them my Bible.
Yeah.
This is how I do it. I wouldn't be able to live without it. And I used to not think God of as a genie, but when I look back at some of my prayer requests or the way I prayed, it's like, wow, how I've just grown. That's not what it's about. It's about bringing Him glory, and if I can do that through this book, then I will feel pretty good.
Well, and I can say that you truly do that, because I just think of everything that you all have been through, and you mentioned also the breast cancer diagnosis, and that's a lot.
Yes.
And it was all right there
All right
together
there.
too. So
Yeah.
it's just amazing how God has just truly given you strength. I'm sure revealed a side of Him that you never knew before, but
Yes.
just having that intimacy with Him and just knowing that He's real.
Yes. Very real. Yes.
And I just want people to hear that, because I know people need to hear that.
Yes.
If people wanted to find more about John Michael, they can get the book, My John 3:16, which I just love because his birthday's March 16th.
Yes.
But then you were also playing off of John 3:16
Yes.
from the Bible.
Absolutely.
For God so loved the world
Yes.
that He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in Him shall not perish but have everlasting life. And that is the great promise that
It is.
any of us have, and it's a free
what it's
gift.
all about, yeah.
That's right. Free gift for anybody. And what fun getting to talk to a fellow Seminole.
Yes.
That just does my heart
Right?
so good. Yes.
Yeah.
And I want to just share with anybody, if you want to follow Revealed Podcast, I'm on Instagram at Revealed Story